मद्रास से कितने बजे आती है? 7:30। No direct flight. You via Bangalore or?
Thank you.
I just like to put it after this. Thanks. How are you? I'll give you a tip.
What? क्या हाल है? Feel कुछ उतना ये you are late. After I have been asking about you. हाँ जी। I was hoping to say. Practicing in UK for the last 20 years. Though he is a medical doctor, he has written many books and he is able to talk, or he is able to enlighten us rather about spiritual matters, and I am sure all
up somewhere on the way. I am expecting him any time. Now, I shall like to lead the prayer. It's a kind of a new prayer. I shall appreciate it very much if you can please be seated. There is no need to stand up. What I want you to do is please close your eyes and relax and get tuned to this meeting. Whichever high principle or God you believe in, please remember it in your mind. And each time you breathe in, you feel more relaxed. Each time you breathe out, feel more relaxed. And get tuned to listen to this lecture on Kalkism. And let us be silent for a few seconds. Bombay. Then I happened to write this book due to certain events in my life. When European writers write book, they go into the Greek or Greek themes to choose the name of their book. The same way, when I wrote this book on a political philosophy, I thought what name I shall choose. And I choose the name from the Hindu mythology. According to Hindu mythology, Kalki is the 10th divine incarnation to come. And with his arrival, the present corrupt Kali Yuga will end and the new golden age will dawn. Nowhere in the book, or even now, I am not claiming that I am a divine incarnation or anything like that. I am a scientist, medical scientist, and I am a logician. Why I took the name Kalki is, for me it represents the destruction of the old system and the inception and the beginning of a new system. That's why I chose the name Kalkism for this book, not for any other reasons. I can have the lights, please. So that's all the connection between Kalkism and Kalki. And nowhere, again I am telling, I am claiming to be any incarnation with divine power or anything like that. I am not a man of that type. And what this white horse and the blue triangle is representing, it has a meaning. The white horse represents the dynamic good qualities, what is called in Sanskrit as the sattva guna. And also it's important, it is not a tiger or a lion, it's a horse. Horse usually is an innocent, useful animal. It has nothing to do with any sort of ill feelings or terrorist activities. It represents pure dynamic sattvic energy, dynamic goodness to fight the dynamic evil. That is why it's a white horse. Now what is this blue triangle? It's a blue triangle. The blue color represents God or the all-pervading spirit or Vishnu, which is all-pervading like the blue sky, so the blue color. And this triangle is facing up. If the triangle is facing down, it shows the materialism. And the triangle is facing up, it's showing the spiritual. So the blue triangle showing up is the spiritual side of life, or it denotes the Paramatma. That's why the blue triangle and the white horse. Then coming to the pen name Rajarishi, it has a lot of meaning for me. I could have put the name as Ganesanism written by Dr. Ganesan to look absolutely ridiculous to me. I wanted some meaning and purpose behind the name of the book. The name Rajarishi means a lot to me. In '77, when I was in Bombay, I was actually planning to become a sannyasi with the Chinmayananda mission, and I was visiting the Sandivani Sadhanalaya there. That was my interest. Then I was living in the Crawford Market, fourth or fifth floor, and I was looking down. I can see this poor people struggling there to make out a living, day in and day out. And the people living in the hut. For me, a man going from the Kerala, it was a shock to see this sort of people living like animals for their day-to-day living. It evoked a lot of sympathy and regret. So I thought, what am I going to gain by becoming a sannyasi? I will have to do something for the poor people. And also at that time there was emergency in India, 76, 75. And all these things made me to write this book. I was a disciple of Brahmachari Ananda Chaitanya, who is a disciple of Swami Chinmayananda. For 2-3 years I was his disciple. And those knowledge which I gained from him made me to write this book. There are two types of yogis. One is called Vyakta Yogi and the other one is called a Gupta Yogi. Vyakta Yogi is somebody whom you see in day-to-day life, sannyasis, like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Vivekananda, etc. But Gupta Yogi is somebody who is hidden, means he is hidden. He is a hidden yogi. Nobody can know that he is a yogi. They live normal life like others, but they do live in the community like others. But deep inside, they will be like a yogi. So that is where the term Rajarshi comes. There are examples of Rajarshi in our history. The most important example of Rajarshi is none other than Mahatma Gandhi, our father of the nation. He was in politics up to his neck and he was a sannyasi. He is a typical example of a Rajarshi. If we go back to Indian mythology, there are quite a few examples of them. For example, Manu, who is described in the Matsya Purana, one of the earliest kings of India, was a royal sage. He was a great ascetic and a noble king. Another example of them is Vishwamitra, who was born a king and later became a sage. And Janaka, the father of Sita in Ramayana, is a perfect example of a royal sage. Living amidst the luxuries of the royal life, he was a hermit. He is also known as Videha because he was devoid of the body consciousness. Another latest example is Rashtrapati Radhakrishnan. He was a philosopher and a statesman. After publishing this book, I came across a book by the Greek philosopher Plato called The Republic, in which I was surprised to see the parallel thinking. Plato was telling a king should be a philosopher or philosopher should be a king. This is Rajarshi, a philosopher statesman or statesman philosopher. That's the combination I am talking about in today's tense. Next slide. Now, coming to the philosophy itself, I have made it easy for you to understand as a human figure, otherwise it is difficult to understand. Broadly, philosophical schools can be divided into two, one on the material side and the other on the spiritual side. The legs, please. These two schools are diametrically opposed to each other. Here the spiritual is the head of the philosophy, its backbone is Advaita philosophy, and chest is fight against social evils, and the abdomen is fight against poverty, and right hand is fight against poverty, and the left hand is fight against corruption, and the abdomen is the fight for human rights, and this philosophical man walks on democracy and socialism. It's not a hardcore socialism I am talking about, it is diluted socialism. Here in the material schools, they don't believe in God like Marxism. On the other hand, the spiritual school, like the philosophy of Shankara, the Advaita school, we believe in the God. So it's bringing the head and the backbone refers to the spiritual school, and the body is the material school. So it's a blend of both. Now, you may ask why the spiritual head should be spiritual, why we need spiritual. To this, I will make some quotations from here. I am a deeply spiritual man. I personally believe that many of the ills of the society are due to the lack of the spiritual values in life. Sorry to interrupt. I welcome Dr. Nalla Palaniswamy to the stage. Kalkism accepts all the religions. It's a combination of the religious philosophies of all the religions is the head. To quote, a biography by Mahatma Gandhi by Louis Fisher, in which he has felt, Mahatma Gandhi felt, the central evil of today's society is materialism. That's one reason for adopting the spiritual as the head. Again, Swami Vivekananda is telling in one of his treatises, before filling this land with socialistic and political ideals, fill this land with spiritual ideals, which should run like a fire from Himalaya to Kanyakumari and from east to west. That's another reason why I have taken the spiritual as the head of this philosophy. It accepts all the religious philosophies of all the religions. It is not a fanatical view. Now, coming to the backbone is the Advaita philosophy, again the spiritual school. Next slide, please. No, again. This Advaita philosophy, which was enshrined in the Vedas, was brought out later during the 7th century AD, or just around that time, by Sri Adi Shankaracharya. He was the greatest proponent of Advaita philosophy. He preached it all over India. And what is Advaita? Advait. वो अद्वैत जो है जो दो नहीं है, अद्वैत क्या दो नहीं है? The meaning is what is not two. There are two things here. One is the Jivatma, which is the individual soul in all of us. The second one is the Paramatma, or the Supreme Soul. What Shankara is telling, that this Jivatma and Paramatma are not two, they are one. And next slide, please. Later on in Kerala, during the time of Mahatma Gandhi, Sri Narayana Guru was preaching the Advaita philosophy. And next slide, please. And later on, recently, Swami Chinmayananda was preaching the Advaita philosophy all over India and all over the world. Now, to give another example, to make it more clear, one night, a man was walking along the dark street. Suddenly, a ghost sprang upon him, and he was frightened. It was about 20 foot tall, fire coming out of its mouth and blood dripping from its hands. He was about to faint. Then suddenly light fell on it. Then he found that it's not a ghost, it is an innocent post. This phenomena is called illusion. You, by your senses, you misinterpret an innocent post to be a ghost. That is illusion. In Sanskrit it is called Maya. Here, the post is our soul, and the ghost is the human body. There are two phenomena here. One, we are doing what is called misapprehension of the reality, not seeing the truth and seeing the untruth. Like seeing the ghost instead of the post, that is misapprehension of reality. And not seeing the post and ghost, that is called non-apprehension of reality. So, what we have to really see is the post, that is the human soul. And the ghost manifested on is the human body, the ghost on the post. And also the soul is called the self, and the non-self, the body made of flesh, blood and bone, is called the non-self. We all see the non-self, we don't see the self. When we start seeing the self or the soul in everybody, as per the Advaita philosophy, we see only God in everybody. That is the greatness of the Advaita philosophy, which advises us to see the God or supreme power in everybody, irrespective of their caste, creed or religion. For the fire of Zoroastrians and kneeling before the cross of Christians, knowing that all the religions, from the lowest fetishism to the highest absolutism, mean so many attempts of the human soul to grasp and realize the infinite, each determined by the conditions of its birth and association, and each one of them marking a stage in progress. We gather all these flowers and bind them with the twine of love, making a wonderful bouquet of worship. A true Kalkist may belong to any religion, that is no problem. And since a true Kalkist is a believer in Advaita philosophy, he finds the same God in a Hindu, in a Muslim, in a Christian, in a Buddhist, in a Jain, in a Sikh, or in anybody and everybody. To quote again Swami Vivekananda, the only God to worship is the human soul in the human body. Of course, all animals are temples too, but man is the highest, the Taj Mahal of temples. If I cannot worship in that, no other temple will be of any advantage. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, by one or more of all these, and be free. This is the all of religion. Doctrines or dogmas or rituals or books or temples or forms are but secondary details. And also, I will make a quotation by the father of our nation, in which he said, I am a Christian and a Hindu and a Muslim and a Jew. So that is I am proud and pleased to incorporate this great Advaita philosophy as part of this great Kalkism philosophy. Now coming to head and the backbone of the philosophy. Now next one is the chest of the philosophy is fight against social evils. There are so many social evils we come across in our society. Before I left UK, I received this copy of India Today, in which the heading is The Ugly Indians, in which the India Today has seriously and severely criticized certain aspects of our society. Unless we find out our own defects and correct it, nobody else is going to correct it. and I very much appreciated this issue. They have exposed our defects. That's when I remember coming to the issue of social evils. Even yesterday's paper, I saw that few women burned themselves because of the dowry or the Dahej problem. There are children who are made to work without much compensation, and child labor is not something acceptable. There are severe law and order problems in this country. It's again another social evil. I can't summarize all of them. The list is endless. So the gist of the philosophy stands for the fight against this sort of social evils. The next one is the abdomen of the philosophy, which is the fight for the human rights. Human rights are violated again and again in many parts of the world, in many countries. If I feel that this philosophy should be strong enough to support the human rights issues. Now, the major part of this philosophy, one of them is fight against poverty, which is represented by the right hand. I was reading recently Tirukkural, which is a great philosophical treatise in Tamil, written by Thiruvalluvar 2000 years back. Shows that the poverty issue goes thousands of years back, in which he is telling, I will read it in Tamil first, then translate it to English. Aramchara Nalikuravu Indadainum, Piranbol Nokapadu. அறத்தோடு பொருந்தாத வறுமையுடையவன் தன்னை பெற்று வளர்த்த தாயாலும் அயலான் போல் புறக்கணிக்கப்படுவான். That means a poor man will be turned down by his mother as somebody not needed. And he's again telling about poverty. Indum வருவது கொல்லோ நெருநலும் கொன்றது போலும் நிரப்பு. That means நேற்றும் வந்து என்னை கொன்றது போல் துன்புறுத்திய வறுமை இன்றும் வருமோ வந்தால் ஐயோ நான் என்ன செய்வேன். He's telling, a man who is really poor is telling, the poverty which came and afflicted me yesterday, is it going to come today and afflict me again? If so, what am I going to do? And again, Thiruvalluvar is going ahead with his treatise on poverty. நெருப்பினுள் தூஞ்சலும் ஆகும் நெருப்பினுள் யாதென்றும் கண்பாடு அரிது. ஒருவன் மந்திரன் மருந்துகளால் நெருப்பினுள் கிடந்து உறங்குவது முடியும். ஆயினும் வறுமையில் இறந்து கொண்டு ஒரு சிறிதும் கண்மூடி தூங்கவே முடியாது. A man may be able to sleep inside the fire with the help of medicines, but he will not be able to sleep when he is afflicted by poverty. That is the sadness of poverty which has existed for a long time in our land. If any philosophy is not dedicated to fight poverty, there is no use for this philosophy. In fact, the poverty of this country provoked me to write this book. As for the latest figures on poverty, people below poverty line has increased from 16 crore in 1951 to 33 crore in 1997. Illiterates have increased from 23 crore in 1951 to 34 crore in 1991. The per capita food grain production has gone up to only 200 kilograms against a minimum of 300 kilograms. And unemployment has risen 2.3 crore in 1992 to 5.8 crore in 1997. So these are not very satisfactory figures. And also when I was writing this book, I thought this is a country divided by various religions, various languages, castes, sub-castes, and infights based on various things. What am I going to use to unite this vast country with so many differences? And the answer was again the Advaita philosophy. It's the only philosophy which can unite this country together. Now coming back to the issue of corruption, the left hand of the philosophy is standing for fight against corruption. When I wrote this book in '77, the corruption issue, it was tenfold, now it has become thousandfold. See, we all breathe oxygen to live. Without oxygen, we can't live. Suppose we are forced to breathe carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide, we will die. In the same way, this corruption is all around us, above, below, to the left, to the right, inside, outside. Nobody in India can escape the omniscient, omnipotent presence of corruption. Like the carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide choking everybody, it is now choking us. If this philosophy is not going to fight the corruption issues from the beginning, there is no point in having this philosophy at all, whatever religions we talk about. So the philosophy is definitely committed to fight the corruption. Recently I came across some statistics on this. I'm not here to accuse anybody who ruled this country in the past or now. That's not the aim of this lecture. No point in squabbling between us. We have to find an answer for our present problem. These are the figures from the World Health Organization and the International Monetary Fund. Traditionally, even the IMF and the World Bank used to think that corruption was a political and not an economic issue. But considerable evidence from around the world proves that corruption has a significant and negative impact on investment and growth. Recently, James Wolfenson, president of the World Bank, said that corruption was the biggest inhibitor to economic development and to the inflow of funds and domestic investment. In fact, the World Bank has suspended loans worth $300 million to Kenya, saying that the country has failed to tackle high-level corruption. A study done by IMF based on data from around 70 countries has established that high levels of corruption reduce investment and consequently GDP growth rates. The study estimates that if corruption levels in India were reduced to those in Scandinavian countries, investment rates could increase by 10 to 12% per annum, and the GDP growth rate could increase by almost 1.5% per annum. Should corruption levels not decline, it would continue to have an impact on the economy in three ways. The high levels of corruption affect the economy in three ways. One is the higher cost of capital. Second one is lower returns on investment. And third one is lower saving rate. Now, what should be done? I adopted this part of the lecture from a lecture given by Sri Ram Gandhi, President, Indian Merchants Chamber, Mumbai. Now, having said that corruption can disrupt our economic development, we must now look at what can stem its harmful impact. We believe that reforms aimed at stemming corruption must be initiated by the leadership of the country. I repeat that again. Reforms aimed at stemming corruption must be initiated by the leadership of the country. So much on the corruption issue. I don't want to go more and more into that. When we wake up in the morning, first thing when we open the paper, we see a news of corruption. And when we go to sleep, before we go to sleep, you watch the television, another issue of corruption. So day in and day out, we are seeing it. You all know about it. And if a philosophy has to come up, it has to stand against corruption and work against it from the beginning. Now, coming to the leg of this philosophy, one is democracy and next one is socialism diluted. Now, coming to democracy, Abraham Lincoln defined it as rule of the people, by the people, for the people. I've slightly modified it for our purposes. Rule of the people, for the people, by the best among the people. So I am talking about bestocracy. We have to go for headhunting the best in the country and make them lead the country. Then coming to the part of the implementation of the philosophy, I will go into the details of that. Kalkism believes in a high quality democracy. We have got democracy, no doubt, but what is the quality of the democracy we are having? A housewife can become a chief minister tomorrow without knowing anything about anything. That is the situation here. So, quality of democracy has to be questioned. So, the definition of democracy is bestocracy. Go for the best, irrespective of caste, creed, and religion. We are going for the intellectuals in the society. I'll go into the details of that in the further part of the lecture. Now, this leg can't be put in where the hands are, and the hands can't be put where the legs are. The philosophy works on the hands and on the socialism and democracy. And coming to socialism, I'm not talking about the hardcore socialism. This is a diluted socialism. Also, I will call it a scientific socialism. Diluted socialism in the sense that we want the entrepreneur to prosper, at the same time the worker also should be taken care of. We all know that communism has died in the country where it originated after 70 years of experiments. And I still find many people in this country carrying this dead body of the communism and trying to revive it here. The communism has died. We have no interest in that. So we are talking about diluted socialism. And what is scientific socialism? Just like a doctor or a medical scientist is studying the problems of the body, we have to study the problems of the country in a scientific way and analyze it and find a solution. That is the scientific socialism. Oh, slide on there. Okay. Yeah. I am talking about not material communism. I am talking about the spiritual communism based on Advaita philosophy, which advises you to see God in everybody, irrespective of their caste, creed, and religion. It's about minister says he is taking a holiday in Europe. No care for public feelings these days. In our time, we used to call the same thing study tour or export promotion mission. Next one, please. Now again, another politician is consulting an astrologer. Yes, the stars are in favor. You can submit your resignation now without any fear that it will be accepted. Again, another cartoon, is a good cartoon by Mr. R.K. Lakshman. First, it's a hospital ward. The nurse is telling the common man. First, adulterated food. Next, an adulterated cement construction collapsed on his head. Next, a case of adulterated medicine. After that, like that it goes. Next one, please. This is Mr. Suharam coming from abroad after the scandal last year on a carpet made of dollars. Next one, please. Next one. This is where I am coming to the medical model when we are talking about the scientific socialism. What is medical model? I will explain to you. Now, in England about 400, 500 years back, there used to be barber surgeons. They used to do all sorts of operations. Nowadays, to become a surgeon, you have to study and qualify for 10 to 15 years. Barber surgeons can't operate on anymore. Now, I'm comparing the present-day politicians to the barber surgeons. We want trained medical doctors to treat the country. Now, look at the country as an ill person. Look at Bharatamaada as a person suffering with cancer of corruption, anemia of poverty, and have a jaundice of inflation, like that, innumerable illnesses this Bharatamaada has got. But this Bharatamaada is treated by unqualified medical doctors. What I am telling is, under the medical model, just like the clever people are selected and trained in medical school for 3 years, we have to go and select the top brains of the country and train them for 3 to 4 years and make them lead the country. In the book, I have given an elaborate syllabus on it. You must have seen the slide on archaeology. Archaeology means the scientific study of government management and government administration. The word archos comes from a Greek word. So just like a doctor is trained to treat a patient, we have to study 14, 15 subjects before we can touch a patient and write medicine. The same way, the future leaders of the country, or statesmen, I'm not talking about politicians, statesmen should be selected and trained in an academy of excellence, and then they should go ahead to lead the country. That is the medical model. You see the country as an ill person and treat the country in a scientific, rational, logical way. That's the medical model as applied to politics. Now, the next one. Yeah. Now, another one is this military model. Once we form this organization, we want to have a strict organization as in a military. This organization and indiscipline, this organization or party will not survive. That's where the military model comes in. We are not going to fight with weapons or anything. We have to fight against the poverty, corruption, and all the other related issues of the country like an army in a disciplined manner. So the party ranks will have a military discipline and order in carrying out our aims and objectives. That's why the military model is coming in. Now, let me come to the rest of this philosophy. What I have written on this book is only 1/3 of what is in my head. I hope to write the rest of it in future. Now, Kalkism is purity in politics. Kalkism is honesty in politics. And Kalkism is decency in politics. I'm not telling this just from my mouth. These are coming deep from my heart. And I really mean what I said. And Kalkism is renaissance of the spiritual. And Kalkism is world peace. Oh, Peter. Peter. Yeah, wait. Yeah. This is the emblem of the Kalkism, which denotes a white dove holding industrial wheel on one hand and a bunch of paddy seeds in the other hand, It's got a lotus buds with 3 branches on it. This stands for the commitment of the philosophy for industrial development, peace, and agricultural development. And it's written, and the buds on its mouth represent several great principles, which I have outlined in one of the chapters of this book, which are too elaborate for me to explain here. Now it is written on the bottom, Naraseva hi Narayana Seva. That means the service of man is service of God. Since this philosophy believes in Advaita, we see God in everybody, irrespective of caste, creed, or religion. So the dedication to the service to the people is one of the topmost agenda. Some people have asked me, you have mentioned in the book that the book is dedicated to the suffering poor people, and you are talking about this philosophy in a 5-star hotel to the invited guests. If I go and talk to the poor man in the street, they are not going to understand what I am talking. I believe that we can approach the poor man only by a service commitment. Now, Kalkism is based on the motto, service of man and beings is service of God. Kalkism is compassion and love of all religions combined. Kalkism is multi-faith, acceptance and respect. And Kalkism is multicultural acceptance and respect. Kalkism is dedicated to the suffering poor, oppressed millions. Kalkism is green revolution and protection of environment. And Kalkism is equal status to women. Kalkism is democracy. Kalkism is bestocracy. Kalkism is rule of the people, for the people, by best among the people. Kalkism is sheer professionalism. Kalkism is aiming to strike a balance between capitalism and communism. Kalkism is anti-terrorism and anti-anarchism. This party and organization will be totally dedicated to fight any sort of terrorism and anarchy. And we won't be involved in any sort of anarchic or terrorist activities. We believe in the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, who believed in Sattvic fight. Now, Kalkism is anti-racism. Kalkism doesn't differentiate the difference between white or black or yellow, or not bothered about their color. We are more concerned about the self than the non-self. We are not concerned about the ghost. We are more concerned about the post. And Kalkism is anti-communism, and Kalkism is internationalism. And Kalkism is looking thousands of years ahead into the future. This is not a philosophy which I wrote for next 10 years or 30 years or 50 years. This is a philosophy written looking forward to few thousand years to tackle the many varied problems. And we are more interested in administration than agitation. Our Independence Day leaders were agitators. There was no other way but to get the freedom. They were agitators. But we are aiming at training a high-quality administrative statesman who will be more interested in administration than running around the streets with flags. That is our main aim. And Kalkism does not use narrow regional ideals which depend on language, race, or nationalism to thrive. Kalkism is a national philosophy with an international outlook. It's not a philosophy based on a caste, language, or race, and it's not a regional philosophy. Although it is an Indian political ideal, very relevant to the Indian political scene, as it is based on universal brotherhood and love, it can become an international political ideal if properly understood and appreciated. It is both thoroughly modern and relevant and it derives its essence from the ancient Sanskrit scriptures. It emphasizes the universal brotherhood and love and will break down the barriers imposed by nationalism. In this context, I would like to refer to one professor from Maharashtra, in which he has written, "The revival of Vedic culture is an attempt to usher in an era when there will be no difference of caste exist, no disparities between the rich and the poor, no problem of the East or the West. In this era, the wall-dividing communities, nations and countries will crumble into dust and open before our eyes a magnificent vista in which there will be one nation, one country, one humanity, all nations, all countries, all human beings merging themselves into a great openness." It's a quotation from Heritage of Vedic Culture from Satyavarta Siddhalinga. Now, Kalkism comes out with an answer for today's social and political and economic problems, which is both logical, reasonable, and scientific. It embodies at its center socialistic, democratic, central principles with a spiritual rather than the material as its foundation. Kalkism firmly believes that statecraft should require study, training and research, and that its practitioners should be much more professional specialists than they are now. So much about the philosophy. I have minimized it as much as possible. Now, the philosophy, to start with, we can't have wait for our future leaders to be developed immediately in an academy which we want to found. Until then, we want to go for the intellectuals in the society who will be dedicated and will be honest in carrying out the philosophy further. That's what we are thinking. But in the long term, the implementation is different. All our leaders should be selected first based on their merit. It's a three process is here. First, the selection, go for the best brains in the country. And second is training. The training will involve 3 to 4 years. The training process, 1/3 will be spiritual studies and 2/3 will be archaeological studies. I mentioned about this in page 117 of the book. There's a big list of subjects to be covered, comparable to the number of subjects a doctor will complete in his training. Then after that, they will be coming into the society to lead the country. For which I was trying to find out, okay, we select these people, we train them. After 3 years, how are we going to employ them? After thinking a lot, I have worked out some sort of employment methods by which the selected trained leaders will be immediately employed and will be able to earn a reasonable income. Otherwise, this course will not attract the intellectuals in the society. And the last part of the book is dealing with the constitution and other aspects. And next slide. Again. Yeah, that will, here. Now, another thing, it's not going to be just dealing with politics. This political organization which we are thinking of will have 3 main functions. One is political activities. Second will be service activities. If we want to go to the poor people and let them understand what we are talking about. We need a service commitment. Without service commitment, the poor people are not going to accept this. And the third wing is education. Educational wing will devote enormous attention to detail for the selection, education and training. Education, training, research will be our watchword. Train people, educate, train. And we have to do enormous research on the socio-political issues of this country. So the education wing, these three wings I'm thinking of. Finally, I don't have the slide on it. I worked out a flag on it as well. It's a triangular flag. Why triangular flag? White in color. Please imagine that. Triangular flag, white in color. Each side of the triangle represents each principle. One for the cultural development, one for the economic development, one for the spiritual development. So it will be a three-dimensional development which I am dreaming of, not just economic development. Socio-cultural, economic, spiritual development. Why the flag is white in color? It is white in color for the reason that it represents what we call a sattva guna, the dynamic good qualities to fight the dynamic evil. And the emblem on it is 3 lotus buds, which are described in detail in one chapter of the book. These 3 buds represent certain great principles. The one bud is for the agricultural development, the another bud is for the industrial development, and third one stands for certain great spiritual cultural development. Now, you may all be wondering why this man has come all the way from UK to talk about this philosophy. Does he want our money? Does he want our votes? I'm not here to ask for any of that. The reasons are entirely different. There are mainly 2 reasons. One of them is I love my country. I am what we call a Deshabhakta. I love this country. I have to talk to myself. Now I want to do something for our country. So I'm seeking the help of the intellectuals in the society to join hands with me. That is one reason. Though I have been in UK for 20 years, I have not changed my citizenship, so I could change any time if I want. I'm still an Indian citizen and I'm proud of it. Now, I'd like to quote another thing from the Niti Shastra of Bhartrhari, in which he is writing, telling as to why I am giving this lecture. There's another reason. Bhartrhari is writing, Paropakaraya balandi vrikshaha, Paropakaraya duhandi gavaha, Paropakaraya pahanti natyaha, Paropakaraya sadam vibhudayaha. I will translate that into English. The trees give fruits for the sake of others without expecting anything. The cows give milk for the benefit of others without expecting anything back. And the rivers flow for the benefit of others without expecting anything back. Now the great sages and the holy men shower blessing on others without expecting anything in return. In the same way, I am giving this lecture for the benefit of this country and our people, and in large, maybe for the world. Now, one of the former presidents of the United States, Mr. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, said, "Don't ask what your country did for you, ask what you did for your country." Now, this is your chance to do something for your country by joining hands with us. That is the reason for this lecture. Now, I have to thank Mr. Ramesh Kumar for helping me to arrange this meeting. Without his help, I won't be standing in front of you today. And also, I am extremely grateful to Dr. Nalla Palanisamy of Kobe Medical Center and Hospital Limited, who has been supporting this philosophy. Dr. Nalla Palanisamy was a physician in States for 15 years. He came back to this country in '87. We met in London in '87. At that time, Kobe Medical Center and Hospital was only a dream. By 1990, the hospital, a 300-bed NRI hospital, was up and working thanks to his efficiency and dynamism. I respect him for 3 reasons. I respect him as a person. I respect him as a senior colleague in the medical profession. And thirdly, I respect him as an entrepreneur. Though late, I'm glad he could turn up. Having said this, I conclude this my lecture. Please ask any questions you have.
United Kingdom to talk about it. When we are not talking about, he is talking about. I wish he should succeed, and that's why I'm here. And I hope in course of time we will also awaken ourselves and do something for this country. Thank you very much.
Anyway, that beside the point. I was sometime in Rishikesh, and there was this course at Shivananda Ashram about Jivatma. This is the ridiculous thing. There is no such thing as Jivatma. Atma is eternal, as in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, the Atma never dies. So the question of having a Jivatma doesn't arise. Then we came to another new thing, that was Sarvatma. All of us have Atma, who are present at this moment, at this time, including humans, animals and plants, as also in Bhagavad Gita by Lord. So we have Sarvatma in this period. And then there was an Atma before us. Our ancestors had Atma, and the children who born will have Atma. And this great river of Atma is Paramatma. So we can't just talk about Atma or Jivatma and Paramatma. We have to bring in Sarvatma, because we all possess Atma.
I very much agree with that. What the Advaita philosophy is telling, the only one existence and the absolute reality. I do agree with you.
I think I have been misunderstood. In words, you could just say Paramatma and forget about Atma. Atma is the individuality. In Advaita and Dvaita, when you're talking, you have to see if you have a God and a disciple, then it's Dvaita.
That's why
And when God and the disciple is one, then it's Advaita. But taking Dvaita, where Atma is there, then there's Paramatma.
Yes.
We don't need the words.
Yeah.
But what is important is to introduce Sarva-Atma. That is the Atma of all of us. We all have Atmas. It's not just Atma and Paramatma. There's Sarva-Atma, all Atmas.
Yes.
And there are these 3. In Advaita, we can call it Atraita, put in 3. There are 3 stages. Then it is just one Paramatma. There are
yes.
But if you are going to bring in Jiva-Atma, which doesn't exist, there is no such thing as Jiva-Atma, because Atma never dies. Jiva-Atma is only possible if there is a Mrityu-Atma. If there is a Mrityu-Atma.
Now that's what I was telling. The word Jivatma used only for practical purposes, for the sake of explanations.
Yeah, but that's wrong, because at Shivananda Ashram there was a great discourse on this.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Somebody is asking. This is somebody asking.
We must be thankful to Dr. to give us an opportunity to think about the country, which we never do. What I would say is that if you allow me to just simplify the system, that the country is like a pyramid. The base of the pyramid may be called as an infrastructure. The center of the pyramid can be called the administration and whatever we may call it. The top of the pyramid is policies, politics. We have a very good infrastructure. We have a very good brain to administer it. But the top of the pyramid, the apex, is rotten and corrupted. And there is only a small portion of it. If that can be rectified, I think we all will be comfortable. If you see the world scenario today, the world is decaying. You look at the East, it is decaying. You look at the West, decaying. Communism is decayed. We are the only one who are still surviving and surviving really beautifully well, because we have a very strong base from our ancient philosophy and literature. Coming to the country that we said that why the country has gone down. The other day I was operating in the theater, and I do not know if the gentleman is maybe in the audience, I do not know. His brother was having a problem on the head. He fell down and there were stitches to be put. And he's a very senior man in the police. He walked into the dressing room along with the doctor whom I knew. So both of them were in the dressing room watching the minor stitching that I was doing. And they were friends from London. And they said that those days were beautiful and we used to enjoy ourselves, a beautiful college and very nice. Why have we come to this shitty country? They were calling India as a shitty country. There's so much of corruption, so much of problems, everywhere problem, and like that. So I stopped stitching and I said, gentlemen, excuse me, have you ever thought that why this country you are calling as a shitty country? So they were just taken aback. I said, when in a country, the decision makers, or you can say the people who are supposed to do discipline, are also lawbreakers, what do you expect from normal people like you and me? In other words, we only need 5 people honest in the center and 5 people honest correspondingly in the states. And those 5 people honest we need is an honest president to himself and to the country, honest prime minister, honest Supreme Court Chief Justice, honest administrator, and an honest police administrator. You can call him anybody. These 5 people in the center, 5 people corresponding in the states. If there are 30 states, I don't know exactly how many we may call the states, because there may be tomorrow 2 more states produced. 155 people. We, population of 100 crores, have not been able to produce 155 honest people. Let us do introspection and find out. If we have 155 people in this country, after 10 years or 20 years or 50 years, I do not know, we will again be ruling the world. If you go to the history, people invented world while they wanted to invent India, because we were on the top. And this will be reversed again. If these 155 people we can produce from somewhere, the job is done. And that is what I think Dr. is trying to propagate, that he is giving us an opportunity to think about the country, which we never do. If we ask a question in a day, how many minutes we spend thinking about the country? How many days in a month, how many days in a year we think about the country? I would say, if we keep the hand on the heart, definitely we will say, not an hour in a month, not a day in a year. That is a fact. And this country where we are living. I am really grateful to you that you have given us an awakening, maybe to a small audience, and I think this message should propagate. If one of us can tell, and can tell to 10, and those 10 can in turn tell to another 10, I think the next 10 years, everybody in this country will be knowing what should we be doing. Sorry, I have taken a little time, but I'm really grateful.
Doctor, can I just answer Dr. Singhal, please? North of India, and you are welcome very much to join us on this endeavor.
Lecture. I'm afraid some of us tend to portray a very gloomy picture of this country. We are a democratic country who adopted a constitution to ourselves, and the people who are electing a government. It is the electorate that sends every elected member to every legislature, whether in the state or in the parliament. They are the representatives of the people. You may be decoyed, but you are representing the people. People have elected you by a due process of law. Now, either you can have a democracy or you have a meritocracy. People make some merit, as you're suggesting. I'm afraid we have two-tier arrangement. In that, on one side, you have the elected representative of the people. On the other side, you have the administrative services, which to my mind are excellent. They can compare with anybody in the world. You have the army, which is as good as any other army in the world. You have the medical profession, you have the engineers. I mean, they are the best brains. Now, we have problems, and the problems are, A, our expanding population. We have grown 3 times of what we were in 1947 when we became free. How can a country cope up with an expanding population of 25 million every year? In 10 years, you become 250 million. Now, that is the crux of our problem. The second is education. Now, these are the 2 areas which neither the government wants to tackle seriously, nor the society, nor any political party. I yet have to see any politician coming forward, any bureaucrat coming forward, any social leader coming forward to talk on how to control the population. Today you have 60% of the electorate who are below 30 years of age. Now, what are you going to do with all these young men that are growing? Will there be enough job opportunities? Would they not commit robberies? Would they not result in unemployment? No, so let us pinpoint the real problems of the country. To my mind, this is education, this is acute poverty. You have to remove poverty, otherwise you can neither reduce population, nor can you improve education. We have pockets of development in this country. Take Kerala, for instance. How come Kerala develops but not the neighboring states? How come Punjab develops and not the neighboring states? Now, the answer is, the better you're educated, the freer you are, the better you will be, and you will be able to concentrate on matters like spiritualism and other things. Thank you very much.
That's one of the major problems we have to tackle, and your views are very much right and appreciable.
I'm surely certain about one thing, that all of us know the problem, leaders, laymen, middlemen, but what kind of action or planning we're going to do, or any movement, any society. So we need some sort of society who can put everything into practice, that we know about it. So what sort of action your movement can take or can do to put into practice these things?
Now this is what are we going to do? That's what I was talking about. Selecting the future leaders and training them and sending them to serve the people. We have to infuse quality into the democracy, infuse quality leadership. That's what I was talking about. And I'm selling the book for 100 rupees. There are now under no compulsion to buy it. The more of the details on the implementation is in the book. This is what I am talking about. There's no point in myself coming here and talking about the problems without offering an alternative solution. That's what I'm doing.
Because if you are talking about people coming and joining a movement and some people associating with you and then they are also propagating, so you or somebody else will take on the mantle of selecting future leader or seeing who's right or who's wrong. So I don't think that that's the kind of system you are talking about. But if you are talking about a democratic system, then we had expected that you would tell us not what Kalkism does, that this is how it does, but how does it do? I would appreciate if you give 1 or 2 concrete examples and say that this is the way this philosophy or this movement is relevant in today's world. Just saying that people should come and join a movement. I don't think we have been told very much about how the movement can become effective. You're told what the movement wants to do, what are the ideas and objectives, but how does it happen? There's been no insight into that. I appreciate it.
Your name?
My name is Ajay.
So, thank you very much for your comments. We are in the process of forming an action committee or an executive committee and implement what I am written in this book. That's the main. It is not going to be a decision made entirely by me. We are looking for learned intellectuals and form an executive committee, and executive committee will have to take further actions. Though I wrote this book 20 years back, I started preaching about it only last year. It's actually our 5th meeting. To say concisely, I am applying science to politics, being a medical doctor and looking at the country as an ill person. Suppose an ill person comes to me, I examine them, do the tests on them, find what is wrong with them, and then prescribe the treatment. The same way, look at the ills of the country. We have to do enormous amount of research on various problems. And one of our view is to establish this Academy of Excellence to do the research. Select the best brains. I'm not saying I'm going to select. We have to go by completely on the merit of the applicants who will be guaranteed an employment once they finish the course. And then send them into the society to do what we are supposed to do. So it's very much a scientific approach. It's a radical approach. We are not going to have anybody to be the leader. We want a trained, authorized leader who will be the focus of activities in different areas. That's the main.
Self-inspection and auto-analysis and see what we are doing right or wrong. And only then we can think about the country. Unless we correct ourselves, how can we correct the country? And I will tell you that we are not the one.
Just complete it. One is, I think, when I'm in this question, I don't think, are there other people who have the brief to answer on your behalf? I would like that.
No,
kind of comments are not made. I would like that, what I was saying is, are we talking about replacing an existing system, or are we talking about implementing something into the system? If that is so, then we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
My question was, I was not alluding or inferring that you would decide or something like that.
Right.
I was trying to understand what are the strengths of the system that we are talking about of Kalkism. You are saying that it is, but you have to start somewhere. If a system is bad or it's corrupt or whatever, we talk about theories about self-introspection and, having honest people, but you have to start somewhere in a concrete, practical manner. So I would like to know about your thoughts. Of course, we would read the book, but the interest on the book would be whetted after getting some insight into how this thing can happen in a practical manner. So I am asking you that, are there one or two practical examples? We know what is wrong with our country. We know there are some specific things also. Some gentlemen spoke about population, we spoke about something else. So can we talk about one example that, okay, this is the problem, and this is a practical, ancient way in which we will solve it?
I have a supplementary to this question. See, you talk about the fight against how to define a social evil. If you could give me one example.
See, now, it is that because she has to pay dowry, not for paying dowry, she has to burn herself. Is it an accepted thing in a civilized society? Or is it acceptable for children under the age of 10 to go and work in factory and earn money? I will be expecting them to work study in a school. There is enormous law and order problems all over the country. You can see, if you open the papers every day, you can see stories about murder and so many law and order problems. These are generally some of the social evils. We can implement it only by educating people in the long term. There's no sudden answer to these ongoing chronic social illnesses. Even in medical practices, we deal with acute problems and chronic problems. Suppose somebody has got a chest infection, it is an acute problem which we can treat quickly. Suppose somebody has got a cancer or some other serious illnesses like diabetes, it's a chronic problem which needs a long-term management. The same thing applies to social problems and social evils. Some of them are chronic ongoing problems. There's not an immediate answer, which we have to work on it over a long period to get them under control. And as for the other gentleman, he was asking about the pragmatic side of it. For example, I was talking about the Advaita philosophy on the pragmatic side. This country is a country divided by various religions, regions, languages, castes, subcastes. How are we going to unite them? We need some sort of unitary principle. And on my thought, I came out with Advaita philosophy as part of this Kalkism to sort this in that in a philosophical way we are trying to find equality in everybody and divinity in everybody. That's one way of tackling it. And again I was talking about the medical model. That's where I was comparing it with the barber surgeons and the modern surgeons. There's a difference between a barber working as a surgeon and a modern surgeon working as a surgeon. That is the comparison. We want to bring in and replace the barber surgeons in politics with educated, trained surgeons. I hope it answers your question.
A politician nowadays does not understand about spiritualism.
Yeah.
He or she goes by religion. So we should touch this topic instead of spiritual to religion, isn't it?
See, I wrote it as spiritual means, I wrote it first as spiritualism, which I later changed into spiritual. Spiritualism is entirely something different.
Yes.
Spiritual denotes the spiritual aspect of all the religions. I'm not going to any particular religion. I don't want to put the word religion there. Because Jawaharlal Nehru has said in one of his books that more people have been killed in the world by religions and religious fights than anything else. That's why I deliberately avoided the word religion there. So if you take the philosophy of Hindu religion, there are three parts. The Bhakti, Karma and Jnana Yoga. I'm following the Jnana Yoga or path of knowledge and adopting that. Because for a doctor like me, if you ask me to go and worship in a temple, I will ask you why I should worship. I need a logical answer, which I got in the Jnana Yoga and all the works of Adi Shankara. Otherwise, I must have become an atheist. That's why I put the word spiritual than religion there.
One thing was important which you mentioned, that is about Kalkism is also a great evolution and also protection of the environment. Now I have one basic question. When you are talking about a kind of reformation in the political understanding, in one part, another one is to evaluate the ground reality. What is happening? You know, the philosophy based on 5-star and based on a higher modern society is totally different with the rural background. Because their philosophy cannot go as fast as we are sitting here around, can take it and initiate it much more fastly. Now when Green Revolution factor is associating with this Kalkism philosophy, and we wanted to move forward with some kind of movement towards upgrading those poor people,
Yes.
to take them into the mainstream. Now the problem is the revolution word is a very stationary. When you are talking about Green Revolution, it was only for a small period of the phase. Again putting the same word for the revival of the whole upgrade linking of the movement, I don't think it's an appropriate word. We should put the word like forever evolution. Evolution is a factor, where you can evaluate the things in a much more better than using the term revolution. So I have only one suggestion. If you can use the word ever evolution, then it will give the upgradation of the thinking, how to modernize the agriculture and upgrade the poor people so that they can come into the mainstream and understand what is happening. Until unless awareness is not in the grassroots level, the whole political organization cannot work. Because the people are uneducated, they are basically illiterate, and they are the ignorant and miserable class. They are almost a forgotten. And now bringing those people into the mainstream should be the main philosophy of Kalkism. If you put in your note strongly to somehow manage these people into the ground reality level, where they can understand and move the awareness, that will be the main philosophy. This is just my submission.
What's your name? You are telling. I never use the word revolution anywhere in the book. So I don't believe in agitation or any bloody revolution. We believe in administration, proper administration. And secondly, in that slide you can see, I have mentioned the second wing of the organization will be for service commitments. I believe that we can reach the common people and poor people only by constant, steady service commitments. If I go and talk to them about this philosophy, they won't understand. Now, what we have done in the South is, last year we had our lecture in a 5-star hotel. This year we have come down. We had our lecture in Coimbatore this year in an ordinary hall, inviting people at the lower strata of the society, and I was talking to them in the local language. But along with that, if we don't have the service commitments, it won't work. And also, as some of the audience said, the problem of illiteracy is there, problem of population and education is there. We have to upgrade the education system and illiteracy, otherwise they are not going to understand what I am talking. Basically, at present, in the long term, we are thinking of solid service commitments to the poor in various ways. Otherwise, this message won't seep through to the majority in this country. They won't understand what I am talking. I very much agree with you. I'm talking more of an evolution than a revolution. Send a message. Do you mind if I read? I agree with most of what you have said, since it is based on the Advaita philosophy, which I believe is universal. But when you talk bestocracy, it seems a contradiction, because on one hand it says to divine or God in Brahman, everyone's inner self, or the absolute reality which each person has to realize for himself. Then who is to decide who is the best for the political organization? God or divinity is one, it is the same best, which we have to see in everyone. Let me answer this question first. There are two realities. One is absolute reality and the other one is relative reality. We are talking about absolute reality using day to day to assess who is poor, who is rich. In the same way, we have to accept who is clever, who is not clever. In that way, we have to go. That is one way of doing it. And there are various, I was a psychiatrist as well before I became a general practitioner. There are various methods of assessment which we can use to assess the intelligence, assess the personality. These sort of methods we have to use in the relative reality level. And that is my answer to that. Now, another thing is, then why is the intellectual or others better in any way? I think I answered it. And who are we to decide? Unless we decide in the relative sense with some sort of measurement, who is intelligent. There is one called WAIS or Wechsler Adult Intelligence Test, which tests the IQ of the people. We do it for our day-to-day practice. Otherwise, we can't practice. The same applies in this situation. Even an ignorant or poor person may be at a higher spiritual level or more honest or less corrupt or more disciplined than an intellectual. I very much agree with that. Definitely, if a person of lower intelligence or person of higher intelligence, even if he is poor, it has higher spiritual level, he is not barred from joining us, depending on his merits. Definitely, I have written in detail in the book about the upgrading system. Intellectualization does not mean wisdom or honesty. So what is better? Of course, intellectualization does not mean wisdom or honesty, but throughout the course we have to emphasize this over 3 years coming up, the value of honesty and not being corrupt. And more, in fact, an intelligent crook can be worse than an unintelligent crook. I very much appreciate your questions. Or question?
Dr. Sundaram to please come and round up the whole talk and to please give a vote of thanks. After that, ladies and gentlemen, I request you to go outside. Dinner is served there. Thank you very much.
It's a very stimulating talk, and the very fact in a highly materialistic place like New Delhi, so many people turning up on a Sunday evening and talking about, taking a lot of interest in this kind of a topic shows that people are really interested in a change. In my opening remarks, I said there is a controversy going on in Tamil Nadu because 3 of us are coming from Tamil Nadu. Dr. Ganesan, you are from Kerala or Tamil Nadu?
I'm from Kerala.
Kerala. I could make out from your pronunciation. But anyway, it doesn't make much difference. And why I said this is, you see, when I was a young boy, maybe when they were also very young, in Tamil Nadu there was a movement, you should not believe in superstition. You should not believe in God. Mr. E.V. Ramaswamy started this, and Mr. C.N. Ranathurai was the main force behind it. In fact, our Prime Minister and the Home Minister are going to Tamil Nadu, that is to Chennai tomorrow, to participate in this very function in memory of those people. And those days, Mr. C.N. Ranathurai really quoted Lenin by saying religion is the opium of the people. So it was a very vigorous movement those days. But the very same people, including Mr. Karunanidhi today, has become very highly spiritualistic. They have started going to the temple and they have started believing in rituals. And while doing so, while this transformation has taken place, there is more of corruption in Tamil Nadu, more of skullduggery. It is true in other parts of the country also. I am just quoting Tamil Nadu because we come from there and this kind of a movement started. And the cycle, the wheel has turned a complete cycle. You started destroying the temples, but then you have started going to the temples now. But at the same time, your corruption is much more. The man who goes to the temple, he indulges more in this kind of a corruption. I do not know how will you explain this. But it is really true. And in any case, whatever it is, there is a lot more poverty. There is a lot more corruption in this country. But at the same time, as Mr. Singh said and as Dr. someone emphasized, we need not lose hope. We can be optimistic. And we should still, try very hard. And of course, whatever route you adopt, say you take the erstwhile Soviet Union, the communism had gone because of Gorbachev. And Dr. very rightly said communism is a museum piece in Calcutta in our country. But at the same time, I am also afraid, after I have been seeing on TV in the last few days, the communism is perhaps coming back in the erstwhile Soviet Union also. They are now doing the portraits of Lenin and Stalin again, because there is so much of corruption, mafia rule, there is no law and order, and people kill others, and there is poverty, because at least under communism, your shelter is assured, minimum food is assured to the people, but those things are gone, so naturally people are taken to crime.
I don't know where will it lead to. But as you people, some of you said very rightly, we are in a happy situation. And Dr. Ganesan very rightly said to solve all these problems in a complex country like India, where things vary from Uttar Pradesh or Bihar to Kerala. The Kalkism is the best route. The evolutionary process is the best. That is quite possible because the very fact you are all here and all of us here, even in this five-star hotel, if we take some sort of a pledge today, this evening, after listening to Dr. Ganesan, then we can change the society. Say you go to a government office, you know, they always demand money to do your normal things. Things do not move. Say at least the people in the hall, I think most of you are coming from the commercial sector. Supposing you take a vow today, I won't pay any money at all, come what may, even if it is a question of delay and all that. Say one of my powerful friends came from Madras, in some office somebody was demanding 10,000 rupees. He didn't pay. Second time he came, he didn't pay. Third time he paid it because you see, look, I spend every time coming from Madras 10,000 rupees. And 3 times 30,000 rupees I spend. What about my time? You know, you should not adopt that kind of an approach. This man is demanding money. In any case, I am not going to pay. Even in my old, in my younger days, I remember in my village, one of my relatives was the village headman. They used to take loan of some, even 100 rupees. 100 rupees was a lot of money those days. And you must pay about 10 rupees so that your job will be done immediately. 10 rupees to the clerk in the taluk office. But one of my grandfathers used to say, you should not pay this amount under any circumstances. This is the wrong approach. You must fight against it. So even those days, people are there. Even now, people are there. So all of you here, even if you take such a vow, that I'm giving a small example, you will be changing the society. We will be changing the society in our own way. Similarly, for poverty also, whatever money we earn, particularly in a globalization context, in a liberalization context, you know, the people are becoming richer and the poor may be becoming poorer. And there may be, I do not know, there may be a revolution in this country also, we do not know. Of course, my wife always says there will be a revolution because of the poverty here. I always tell her there won't be any revolution at all in this country. You can take it for granted because we are a highly conservative society. Conservatism in a way is good. And because, you know, you do not have violent shake-up. But at the same time, it's also bad. You know, you believe in religion, you believe in, you know, destiny. In other words, you accept the situation. You are not fighting against the situation. So that's also bad, but we do not know. Anyway, we shall go along with Dr. Ganesan and adopt this evolutionary process. I'm sure many of you will be benefited by reading the book. I have also not read it so far. And if I may say so, he has sown the seed this evening. I am sure it will sprout and become a very flourishing tree for the benefit of all of us and the people outside in this country or in this world. Thank you very much. And once again, I thank Dr. Ganesan for having come all the way, and also Dr. Palniswamy for coming all the way from Coimbatore to be with us. Of course, I must also thank the people, the executives and staff of HINDALCO for their valuable help. Of course, I do not have to thank especially my good friend Shubha Rajan. She is the moving spirit behind it. I never knew that she was, you know, she is working in the CII. I thought she was interested only in materialistic things, but she seems to be interested in things spiritual. So on this note, I close this meeting on a very optimistic note and hoping for a very good future with all of you. Thank you very much.
चार वेजिटेरियन है प्रॉन्स नहीं है इसको भाई देने और आगे से सब Let's to start from problem A. We are gone far ahead. It can never start from the bottom. Impossible. Then, but once the policies and politics is clear, everything will be
No, he said it's all one and the same. He said. Yeah, no.
In London, 690-1700. Italy?
Putting in a capacity 3 times our current capacity. I mean, the long-term point of view will probably be very good customers in your point